This module is the first part of two parts exploring consumer and producer surplus. So here we have the market for iced tea, we have a downward sloping demand curve, an upward sloping supply curve, and we know this point where they intersect is called equilibrium. And if this market is left alone, that the price will settle in on the point of $5 and a quantity of, let's call it 20 units of iced tea will be sold. Right? If this market's alone, it's going to find equilibrium. We can explore this price a little further though, because we know the demand curve represents interests of consumers, and we see that some people, represented by points up here, might be willing to pay a little higher. For example, that point right there suggests that there's somebody that's willing to pay $7.50 for a unit of tea, but they don't have to. They only have to pay the market price of $5. So they get some added benefits, some added enjoyment or satisfaction out of it. And when we measure that, we call that consumer surplus, and we can quantify that for the whole market. And the way we do that is by calculating the area of this triangle. It's everything below the demand curve, but above the prevailing price or the market price. So if that's true, then we can calculate consumer surplus. Consumer surplus, which I'm going to show as a red shaded box here as a legend. Consumer surplus is then the area of this triangle. And to take an area of any triangle, a formula you're going to become familiar with, that formula is 1/2 base times height. Okay, so here's our base. That's how wide it is. So it's 1/2, 20 times, here's how high it is, times 5. So 20 times 5 is 100, but we have to take a half of that. So the area there is $50. The total value above the market price, the enjoyment or the quantification of the enjoyment of consumers in this market is $50. That's consumer surplus. Now let's turn our attention to producer surplus. As we said, the equilibrium price is $5, but there are producers out there that would be willing to produce this good for less than $5. For example, that point right there suggests that there's at least one producer that would make this good for $2.50. And if that's true, they don't have to do that. They get to sell it for $5, so they get extra profit or extra enjoyment out of that. And if we were to quantify that total value, then we would take the area of this triangle, everything below the market price, but above the supply curve. So this triangle right in there, and then again for producer surplus, and I'm going to call it that, label it that blue legend there, producer surplus equals 1/2 base times height, and again our base is 20. That's how wide this triangle is 20. So it's 1/2 20, and it's $5 tall times 5, which equals 1/2 100, which equals $50. Now both of these are $50. That's just a coincidence. They don't always have to be the same. It just worked out that way because of the way I drew it. But I want to make one final point here. If we have a consumer surplus of $50 and a producer surplus of $50, we can combine those, and economists call that societal surplus. How much is everybody benefiting? And combined, that's $100. Okay, the total value of surplus in the society is $100, and economists love markets for this very reason. You will not find a price on here that will give you more societal surplus than that price, the equilibrium price. That's going to deliver 100. You pick any other price on here and it's going to deliver less societal surplus. It makes less people happy. That's why economists love markets, is because they bring you to that point. So that's the first part. Next we'll do price floors and price ceilings in a simple market model.